have to take you all in. This is so amazing. I just have to say good morning. Greetings from Reverend Jeff Anderson, Oakland Center, where he is now. I know he's from this community. He is now my senior minister. I was telling the earlier service that this has been kind of a dream of mine. I don't even remember the first time that I stepped foot into this sanctuary with Reverend Barbara Leger, who also, I believe, came from this community. And she said she, was here years ago, and her kids came up through religious science. And I will never forget, I think it was a little over 10 years ago, I went on the first tour to Ukraine with Reverend Barbara. Many of you might be in the audience today. And I remember Linda Webb-Kakaba. Do you remember her? Yeah, let's clap for her. She was at the piano, and she asked me to sing on a Wednesday night, and I was so terrified to come out of my shell to give my gift of song. And I'll never forget it. I was so nervous, and she was pumping me up and empowering me to just, go all out. And by the time I opened my voice, she missed her cue. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, let's start over." We recovered nicely, but this community has a special place in my heart. I know that Santa Rosa is the sister city to Cherkasy, Ukraine, and of course that's like a second home to me in Ukraine. And so I just want to say thank you to Reverend Edward and this community for bringing me here. This is really a gift. So my topic today is called the courage to rise. The courage to rise. I want you to repeat after me. I don't need permission to be powerful. Like you mean it. I don't need permission to be powerful. I am powerful. I am free. I am worthy. I am important. Who I am makes a difference. I am powerful because I exist. I am powerful because I exist. Now look to your neighbor and say to them, you are powerful because you exist. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. We often forget this, right? We are powerful, or we're seeking permission to be powerful. I know in my young life, I have often waited for something or someone outside of myself to give me that validation, to stand in front of all of you and be powerful, to trust that there's something deep within me that wants to be shared, that we all have a message to give. And so, nature does not ask permission to be powerful. The waves of the ocean, the majestic mountains, the fires, as many of you know in this community, does not ask permission to be powerful. Happy Earth Day to all of you. It is Earth Day today, yes. May we be good stewards of our planet. Rising strong is a spiritual practice. It is looking at our own cosmology and understanding spiritual principle in such a way that we prove to ourselves over and over again our resilience and our responsiveness to life's challenges. Living a conscious life, as many of you know, is not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of inner searching. It takes a willingness to be vulnerable. It is coming back to truth. It is practicing and remembering our connection to Source. It is a deepening. It is a surrendering to all of life. Many people have said for some time that there is a shift going on the planet right now. And I keep wondering what that is. Like, when is it coming? But we see what's happening in the world of effect all the time, of what I call the shadow, the disowned and the hidden or the put away, the aspects of ourselves that we don't want to look at, the things in the world we really would rather just turn away from and bury our heads in the sand. But it's all coming up now. We see it in our political climate. The division and the separation that we see in the world, that people in the world would want us to believe that we do not belong to one another. The political pundits on the news and the social media that perpetuates this separation and this bigotry. We see it in natural disasters. We see it in the hurricanes and in the fires, of course, of really looking at what is it that keeps us rooted in a place of home. We see it in mass killings in this country, of wars, of Islamophobia, of homophobia, of xenophobia, the fear of the other. And then we have the Me Too movement and the pink hats. You look at all the women coming forward, standing in their power, and the rise of the feminine, which is such an incredible thing to see now, of the sexual harassment allegations. You look at the continual denial and abuse of power, the negligence of injustices inflicted and perpetuated within our Black community and with people of color. And so I have thought to myself, wow, this is such a big conversation. How do we as spiritual people rise strong in the midst of so much of that condition? How do we have the courage to rise? Well, I think it's about the courage to rise in right thinking and possibility. The great Howard Thurman, he's a theologian who I admire, who wrote a piece called Moments of High Resolve. And he says, in the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of God, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. That in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless and unfamiliar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Am I in alignment with what I say I believe and value? Is my thinking in alignment? It's so easy, isn't it, to go down the rabbit hole of scarcity and lack and limitation, of the human condition. I remember many years ago, probably I think it was 2015, Reverend Barbara Leger called me out of nowhere, and she said, Savanna, I have a peace conference that I'm about to give in Ukraine, and I can't be there. I have had a family emergency. Could you fill in for me? I said, well, when is the conference? She goes, 5 days from now. Thanks, Barbara, for the heads up. I said, well, Barbara, you do know that there's a revolution going on in Ukraine right now, right? She goes, oh, you're used to revolution. Like, you can handle it. You know the community. You know the language. You'll be fine. I said, well, you know, all these excuses. How am I going to make this happen? How is that possible? But you know, when Spirit nudges you on the shoulder and there's just intuition that it's like, maybe I need to go do that. And I don't really know why, and I don't really know how it's all going to work out, but I guess I'm just going to say yes. So I did. And the next thing I know, I find myself at SFO at the airport standing in front of the guy who's about to check in my bags, and I'm standing there with my license, and he greets the couple before me and says, have a nice trip to Hawaii. You know what's coming. And I give him my information, and he looks down at the pass, and then he looks at me, and he says, are you sure you want to go there? Yes, I am sure. My bags are packed. I'm facing this, and it was a moment of delirium. You know, when you get to Switzerland and you've been traveling all night, and by that point, you're just like, just get me there. But as I'm boarding the second plane to go into Ukraine, I realized very quickly that it is half empty. Nobody's going to Ukraine. So panic started to set in. I started to freak out and make up all sorts of stories. How many of you make up stories? I'm a great storyteller, as you see. And I start making up worst case scenarios of what's going to happen. And I swear I was the only American on this plane, and I'm thinking, man, what did I get myself into? So I dropped immediately into the only thing that came to me that this teaching, thank goodness, has taught me. And I'm sure you all know it. There is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. That life is my life now. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is my life right now. And I said it over and over again until I had a sense of calm come over me. And I landed in Ukraine, and I was greeted by all my dear friends who took me off into this beautiful site in the mountains, actually in the woods. And we had a beautiful conference, and on one particular night, we did this beautiful nurturing exercise outside, candlelit. And as I was facilitating this nurturing exercise, everyone had their hands down and their eyes closed, and they were receiving love and energy. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a group of young people coming, families actually, coming over. And these young people, probably under the age of 7, coming into our group, and it's as if they already knew what to do. Their hands are down by their sides, their arms are wide open to receive. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go with it. Come to find out later, they were families and people from eastern Ukraine, refugees who had been displaced. And so I had such an opportunity to be with them, to spend time, to see that what could have been predicted as a horrible, scary thing was actually such a rich blessing for my life. And sometimes it requires just a shift in our perception and the way we're looking at things, because things aren't always as they appear to be. Yeah, such a powerful time. We must rise in our capacity to love one another. It's taking that journey from our heads to our hearts. And we know in this teaching that it is such an intellectual teaching, isn't it? And it's the merging. Ernest Holmes talks about love and law. We cannot have the law without love. That love is the greatest power there is. And practicing more of it means we must be more kind with ourselves and more gentle with ourselves. It's about leaning into our vulnerability, as I said before. Leaning into those places that might feel uncomfortable. You know, Brené Brown is a researcher, I'm sure. Do any of you know her? She wrote a book called Rising Strong, and which is what my workshop is based on. And she talks about vulnerability and how vulnerability is the thing that creates intimacy and connection. It is the thing that can change communities. She says vulnerability fuels intimacy and connection. It is the ability to show ourselves and be seen with no control over the outcome. It is our greatest measure of courage. And it's not easy. It can be scary being vulnerable. She said that in her research, the most transformative leaders that she has worked with have 3 things in common. The first one is they understand how important story is in culture and community. They also understand how emotions, thoughts, behaviors affect relationships and perception. And the last thing they understand is how to lean into discomfort and vulnerability. So to connect with you in a time of challenge, I must have empathy. I must have some sense or some feeling into what you might be experiencing. I remember a few months back, I was in Colorado visiting my mother, and she's also a minister in this organization, and she had a stroke about 1.5 years ago, and I knew that she was in a lot of pain, and we just so happened to have a conversation that just kind of blew out of control. And I would like to call it a moment of higher level consciousness fighting. There is such a thing. Because when you have 2 ministers and they know the teaching, it's easy to use principle against each other. So here we are. It happens, here we are in one of those moments where I'm really concerned for her, and I'm in a place of self-righteousness of that I know what she needs, and I'm being very mothering and telling her this is the way that it should be, and she's fighting back saying, I can't believe you're saying this, and it was just going back and forth to the point where it just blew. And she walked upstairs, and I went outside and thought, oh man, I gotta go into this. Because the old pattern would have been to not deal with it, to not say we're sorry, to just pretend like it didn't happen. Yes, even ministers have this. We're all human at some level too, right? And so I called a friend, and we talked through it, and he said, Savanna, you have to confront this. Be the bigger person here. So I activated my courage and that little child within me that was screaming for approval and was scared to go knock on that door like I had done something horribly wrong. And I sat down in front of her. And before I could even open my mouth, I started to cry. So that wall that I normally would have up of just my, my fists up, was completely taken away, and I started to cry. And from that place of vulnerability, I was able to say, Mom, I love you. And I'm really sorry that I came across this way. I'm scared for you. I'm concerned about you. And she said, I know. I love you too. And it's okay. And I said, but it was easier to just be angry at you than be vulnerable. We've all had these moments, right? It's easier to be mad and angry than it is to just break our hearts wide open into our own pain. It's not an easy place to go to. But it's part of having the courage to rise in loving ourselves and one another. And so Aldous Huxley, he said, people often ask me, what is the most effective technique for transforming their lives? It is a little embarrassing that after years and years of research and experimentation, I have to say that the best answer is just be a little kinder. Just be a little kinder to yourself, to one another. Where in your life can you soften your heart just a little? Leaning into your own vulnerability, trusting that life is going to support you. It's also about rising in our ability to listen deeply to one another and to our own inner knowing, not needing something outside of ourselves to feel whole, to feel worthy, to feel successful, but learning to sit with ourselves long enough. I know this is such a big practice of mine, to sit with myself long enough to be able to hear my own inner guidance, my own inner knowing. As a spiritual leader, I feel that it is my job to wake up. It's my job to live a conscious life. And it's not always messy on this path, right? It's like taking the layers of the onion away. The spiritual path is not linear. And so I've been asking myself this question: what is mine to do in the midst of all this? Because it requires humility. It requires questioning my own biases and my own judgments, questioning what I was taught in West Texas, in the middle of the oil fields where I grew up, questioning all of it. We know that usually what follows breakdown is what? Breakthrough, yes. And so when I think about the upheaval of the news of all these women who have been stepping forward and how we've all been affected by this, the divisive climate that we are in, the bigotry that we see, we've often heard that it's either a call for love or it's a call to love. And so perhaps there's something in your own life that is calling you to love a little bit more. It's a call for love or a call to love more. So I love my family. And yet our family, my family, doesn't agree on almost anything. And so recently at the holidays, I had a really interesting opportunity because naturally, as all this stuff is surfacing, it's calling us to practice and to try to listen to one another. And when you're with your family, there are usually conversations you agree you're not going to talk about, right? Well, this year was epic for us. It was epic. I had my first white privilege conversation with my family. I had my first race conversation with my family and my first gender equality conversation with my family, all in one holiday. It's a lot in one holiday. And it completely blew up. And, think about how enlightened you are. Go home to your family and you'll see. Because it shows you all of your stuff. But it was a moment for me. It was a moment to stand in the truth of what I know, of what we teach about oneness. And if we're going to talk about oneness, it's like I can't keep, hiding all of this stuff about separation and about me and you over there and us and them. It's just, it was, wow. But it was one of those moments we had to really dig deep. And it wasn't easy. The Association for Global New Thought is an incredible organization that we are part of with the Unity Movement, the Divine Science Movement, some other New Thought communities. Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith is part of that, Reverend David Alexander up in the Pacific Northwest. Many people, you may know them, and what they've currently been doing, which I so admire, is that they are taking a different stance in how they go about our teaching and how we deliver it to the world. So rather than sitting on a mountaintop, which there's nothing wrong with sitting on a mountaintop and praying and meditating, but they're saying, what is it that we can actively be about and do in the world? And so all of these minds are coming together, and they're creating all of these incredible projects and events and things that they want to do. Now, at this particular meeting, I got permission to share this story because it was so powerful. I thought I have to share this. At this particular meeting, the great Reverend Yvette, she's a bishop, Bishop Yvette Flunders, who's out of the East Bay, she was at this meeting. And she just so happens to be one of those reverends who was one of the only Black lesbian ministers within her denomination. I think it was the former Pentecostal church, who created her own thing in the East Bay and has been the city of refuge. That's what it's called, the city of refuge for so many people. She is a powerful woman. She was on the cover of our Science Mind magazine the month before me, and I admire her work deeply. And she was sitting at this meeting, and everyone's talking about the issues around race and privilege and all the stuff going on in the world. And she looks across the table at them, and she says, "Your apathy and your silence is killing my people." And every one of them just went, okay, we got it. And so from then on, it was like this deepening happened amongst all of them of where are we really going to put our attention and our focus? Are we going to be about what we say we teach? Not just the intellectualization of it, but are we going to be the embodiment of this teaching? Can we actually listen to one another and go across the seemingly divide to other faith traditions, other people that may disagree with us? And so I challenge you in your own life to practice listening a little bit better to someone in your family, to maybe you're a colleague at work, or maybe it's somebody you really don't like. That is our work for sure. I want you to repeat after me. Potential always exceeds appearance. Potential always exceeds appearance. Things aren't always what they seem. There is something so much greater and more magnificent planned for each one of our lives, and we often limit ourselves and hold ourselves hostage to actually fulfilling that. And so we must have the courage to rise strong, to rise in right thinking and purpose, to rise in our capacity to love, to rise in really listening deeply to one another. And so in closing, I want to share with you this beautiful quote for all of the divine feminine in all of us. And it's by Sukhvinder Sirkar. Edgewalkers. Shh. She is traveling between worlds right now. You can see her holding the tension of not knowing. She is simply breathing into her unanswered questions. Sometimes she wakes up with quaking hands, not knowing where her relationship or her bank account is going. But this time, she is holding onto the tension of not knowing and is not willing to hit the panic button. She is unlearning thousands of years of conditioning. She is not being split between the opposing forces of fight or flight. She is neither naive nor ignorant. She is a frontier woman paving new roads and making new choices. She is willing to make a new, transcendent possibility emerge. You may see her now, standing at thresholds or at crossroads, breathing into her body, intently listening for inner signals. She's learning new navigation skills as she arrives at a most magical moment of her life. And Rachel Naomi Remen says, so perhaps change is less about fixing a broken world and more about uncovering hidden wholeness in all events, all organizations, and all people, and remembering our personal power to make a difference. So let's take a collective breath together as we go into prayer. Holding this consciousness of this power, this presence of the one life, of the one infinite intelligence that is everywhere and always. It is the only activity happening right here and right now, infusing us with possibility thinking, knowing that everything is working together for good right here and right now. As we release fears and doubts and worries about how we're going to do this or that, I know that we discover that there is something magnificent happening for each and every one of us. For I know we are connected. We are one. We are divinely guided, protected, and nurtured in every way. And so bring into your awareness now someone or something in your life that you so desire to pray for or to be about, and I want you to just say their name out loud. You may whisper it to yourself. Holding the space of wholeness and healing. For all people everywhere, I give thanks for this power of love that is greater than anything there ever is or was. For I know that something magnificent is happening for each and every one of us. And so let us sink into that. Let us remember our oneness with life of who and whose we are. And so I give thanks for this prayer. I give thanks for the unfolding of each and every one of us to our good, our joy, and our love. And I let it be. And together let us say, Ashe, and so it is. Amen. Blessed be, everybody. Take care.